And that's one of the failings, Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman.
Honourable David Parker.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Sorry to my colleague. Mr Chairman, I want to take a call in respect of Part 1 of this bill and refer to some of the particular concerns that the Labor Party has in respect of this part of the Act. Mr Chairman, you'll have heard from prior speakers in the Labor Party that we thought there were some general concerns relating to missing an opportunity to put in the issue of child wellbeing as being a core object of the Act, which was raised by various submitters. And I'm not going to deal with that particular issue. I'm not going to repeat that. I'm going to raise a new issue, sir, and that is the effects of the new 28% shared care threshold in the legislation. Now, this legislation introduces a new threshold where the relative financial contributions between normally a separated couple, normally a man and a woman, where the most common consequence is that the woman has day-to-day child-rearing obligations, and at the moment the time the percentage of time that the child is with the other parent is higher than 28% before there is a diminution in the contribution from the non-main custodial parent. What this bill does is introduces a new threshold of 28%. So effectively, if a parent has 2 days care of a child per week, then there will be a different allocation of resource within that couple who are no longer together. And as a consequence, the amount of money that the primary caregiver, who has the child for 5 days a week, will decrease compared with the status quo. That's the very point I was going to make, that's quite so. This is normally going to adversely affect women more often than it will adversely affect men. Now, we in this House are trying to achieve fairness as between people. We should also be trying to preserve the interests of the child, or giving primacy to the interests of the proper maintenance of the child, who is the primary responsibility of the two biological parents in most cases. And I'm not convinced that this change does that, because what it will do is it will, in respect of some quite low-income people, result in a reduction in the income that's going to the primary caregiver. The primary caregiver has a higher proportion of the bills. More often than not, it's going to have to pick up all of those incidental costs, which are essential as far as the well-being of the child is concerned, but probably not viewed as essential by the authorities who count the numbers. Things like school trips that are optional, the occasional participation in a group event by the child, like going to the movies with their friends. Those are the sorts of things that are effectively a cost more often of the parent who has most of the care, because they're the parent who has responsibility for keeping a decent balance in the household, and the main responsibility for keeping decent balance in the household, and making sure that their child rearing they do it to the best of their ability and in the interest of the child. So some of the examples that were given by the Labor Party in our minority report in respect of this included the fact that it is more likely that the primary caregiver will have more responsibility for dental, medical and other treatments, especially dental. Medical, admittedly, probably arises on more of a as-needed basis, and that could be at any time of the week. Although, having said that, most people try and avoid the doctor on the weekends because it's too expensive to go on the weekends, and it's more often the mother that will face the cost of those costs, particularly in the case of dental equipment. This is also true of clothing costs, of school costs, school clothing costs like uniform. So, Mr. Chairman, we're not convinced that these changes are wise in that regard. I would like to hear the Minister and the Chair respond to that issue and explain how it is that this is going to be implemented in practice to ensure fairness as between parents in respect of children who qualify for support.
Mr Chair.
Sue Moroney.
Mr Chair, and a pleasure to rise. Actually, a pleasure to rise in opposition to Part 1 of the Child Support Amendment Bill, because in standing in opposition to this,